intro. Hello, fun people. I'm Isaac Carlson, and I'm focused on spreading magic by discussing Disney, DreamWorks, and animation. And today we're going to be looking at the Broadway smash hit Hamilton that is now streaming on Disney+. This story chronicles the tale of the American founding father Alexander Hamilton using hip-hop, R&B, and Broadway-style music through the lens of America today. But while I'm finally seeing Hamilton today, it's definitely not the first time I heard about it. I remember learning about Hamilton years ago within my senior year of high school in my AP US history class with Mr. Saraki. Yeah, I remember him talking about it at the end of year, talking about how he's going to bring his daughters to it, and I had no clue what it was at the time. And over the years, it just seems like the show just would not stop gaining traction. Eventually, I learned what it was, and now it's just this massive behemoth of a Broadway show. I haven't seen a Broadway musical reach this type of presence in pop culture since Wicked, and I'm excited to be able to I was excited to be able to enjoy it today. It was incredible to be able to see for the first time, especially when the story felt like was one that was important for right now. This seems like an important time to see, enjoy, and experience diverse perspectives, and now we got to enjoy it. I absolutely loved seeing it. I'd seen the music a little bit in the past. My girlfriend Jaden loves Hamilton. She was really into it, especially when it first was coming up onto the scene, listening to all the music. And I had some awareness of what it was like. Like I knew that they would always go like Alexander Hamilton. Like I was aware of that going into it. I was kind of aware of the historical presence of Alexander Hamilton, again because of AP US history class A push. So I also was aware that he had wrote the Federalist Papers, linked to the American Constitution, supporting it. But beyond that, I didn't know much. But you could tell right at the beginning when they started like teasing all of these aspects that were going to appear in his life, that were going to happen in the musical. I mean, right away when three women say that they love him, and we find out what his fate is, it's pretty wild. Spoiler alert, he dies. If you aren't aware of, his historical death. And I wasn't sure what the ride was going to be like what we were going to see, how far in his life we were going to go, until that moment, until we got the realization that from this moment, from the beginning of the revolution to the point where he was going to die, we were going to be able to see that all. And there was a lot of drama that occurred throughout that time. First off, I'd like to say Alexander Hamilton as a character, extremely compelling. The idea that he's this person that really comes from nothing and has this drive to create something for himself, and he's willing to die to do that as well. He's willing to put everything on the line to make sure that his legacy is secured and this country that he came to is going to be able to go off and become something larger than himself. And for the most part, he's able to do that for quite a while. He faces some resistance from George Washington, which, speaking of George Washington, man, was he awesome when he came out of the scene. One thing that you just kind of constantly hear about when studying politics and American history especially is everything goes back to George Washington, that he set the precedent of every like major decision kind of goes back to how a president is supposed to act. Everything goes back to George Washington. So when he comes out there and it's just laying down the law and like totally making this big presence and having this refined nature, but also being stern. He kind of takes the father figure place for Hamilton as well. which I wasn't really expecting until they really started to get conflict from it. Hamilton really wants to push himself forward, and become his own man. And so he's got some of that like wrestling with George Washington. Also, when Jonathan Groff comes on as King George, oh my goodness, he stole the show. I have a high affinity for the how do you phrase it? The wildly eccentric rulers. Like I think of like Lord Farquaad, like Scar has that refinedness to him. Like, oh my goodness. Who would have guessed Kristoff would have made such a great or at least entertaining king? I wouldn't consider him to be a great king by any means. But anytime he was on, it was such a joy. And you really got to see the probably the negative aspect of having a, what's the word? Close up in a typically, theater production, is that you got to see all the spit come out of Jonathan's mouth. But the thing is that I want to mention now that I'm kind of talking about that is the difference between being in the seats of a theater production and having it recorded, is that there are those different perspectives, that there's the close-up shots and the panning, and sometimes that's not how it was created. That's not how it was intended to be seen necessarily, but I thought it did a good job of capturing, using your imagination, because there really aren't that many props. There's not that many sets. It's really just like the bare bones of it. And the actors and the music is what allows you to create your imagination, to suspend your disbelief as these people are on stage, and you feel transported to, I mean, never actually been there, but all of the pictures and the history books that you've seen and read, and all the pictures and everything just kind of makes you like go into that belief that you're in the American Revolution. And it's so cool to be able to experience that. Most recently, the other musical that I saw recorded was Shrek the Musical, and even though it's not the same as being in the seat, I thought it did a great job of capturing the story. And I really can't imagine what it would be like as a movie. Sometimes Broadway musicals are brought into a film. They're like trying to be brought up with all of the props and the sets and the everything. But I feel like this story worked so well in the medium that it was done. I can't imagine having a King George like he's portrayed, or a Thomas Jefferson on the screen, and it feeling as normal as it does on the stage. Speaking of Thomas Jefferson, he was super cool too. Man, when Thomas Jefferson and Hamilton get to have their back and forth, it's like lightning. Like you can totally see the arguments for either side of these issues that they're dealing with. Primarily, they were referencing the issue of or kind of dealing with, once the country was created, dealing with what do you do now that the Articles of Confederation aren't working very effectively. So at that point in history, right after America was established, there was no strong centralized government, which meant that it was pretty much 13-ish like independent states that were pretty much acting as their own countries and were not actually working as a unified country. And so that worked out for some of the wealthier states that were exploiting slavery that Alexander Hamilton brings up. But then Hamilton's like, no, we got to be one. We got to be one union. And so I was like, because I knew once Jefferson got on, it was like, oh, you're going to bring up some good points. I know you will, but it's like, you fought for one institution, one country. So that's when it got like exciting, was seeing that back and forth and that wrestling. with the two different political ideologies that were going on. If you can't tell, I was really into American U.S. history, especially my senior year of high school. It was so fun. I loved doing that class. I just would sit and absorb the lectures. It was just like all this stuff, and then I would pair that like before the AP US history test with like lots of crash course videos. So I love looking at the overarching history, especially when it relates so closely to like where I live and the culture that I exist within. It's just so fascinating to me. And then there was all the drama with Hamilton's women. Wow. Like, what is up with these? I mean, like, these guys doing this wild stuff with all these women, especially when they were sisters. It was like, Hamilton, what are you doing? I mean, honestly, that was probably the thing I was wrestling with the most with Hamilton. The point where I like disconnected with him as a character, and I was really like trying to understand where he was coming from. I could understand why, I could empathize with why he was looking for honor and glory, why he wanted to be on the battlefield, like why he wanted to fight for that. He didn't feel like he had anything to lose, so he felt like he needed to, use his life for something purposeful. And then once he has that and he's got a wife, then he starts like fraternizing with her sister, who also was in love with him. And then when they both go away, he cheats on both of them with a third party. And that's when it's like, Alexander Hamilton, you throwing it all away. And Thomas Jefferson even brings that up. He's like, you'll never be a president now. And oh my goodness, it's so shattering to see this person that set up so many aspects of like the institutions of, actually is a founding father and doesn't get a lot of the recognition in mainstream history, being one of the presidents. One of the things that, often is one of like the testaments. He didn't get to be in the Hall of Presidents at Disney World because, well, for one reason, because he was with all these women. And so it's just tragic because I was connected with his desire to have a legacy and to have his honor stabilized and be able to grow long and be told long after him, have his story told. And it seemed like by his own doing, he kind of threw that away because he didn't have the self-control not to. Oh, that was a wild ride, to say the least. Goodness gracious. And then man, where do you go from here? Then they had his son. His son was interesting. It was kind of weird to like see him, like to believe that he was like a 9-year-old, even though you could clearly tell he was a lot older than that. But then once he was transitioned into a young man, then it started to get real. It was like he was presenting himself a lot like Hamilton did. He was being very poetic and using all of the musical like moments that Hamilton had used. And now it seems like, oh man, that Hamilton's next heir. Like, oh, this is how Hamilton will be able to continue to survive. And again, I didn't know what was going to happen to him, but of course he died too. And then you start to see this like connection of the pride in people destroying them. And it's just so sad that like that this boy's life was destroyed because of his desire to preserve the honor of his family, and it resulted in everything going away for him way too young. And then of course that is kind of what happens with Hamilton himself, and that transitions well into Burr. Oh my goodness. So once he said that he was the one who was going to kill Hamilton, I was immediately intrigued. And then there was this very interesting dichotomy between him and Hamilton, Burr and Hamilton, with this wrestling of Hamilton being very outspoken all the time, documenting every single one of his thoughts, and Burr just kind of floating along. and it was cool that that was a focus of the narrative, that there was these two foils were the enemies of each other. I thought it was did a really good job of not painting Burr as like just like a mustache twisting villain like the King was, and he was someone who was just trying to do what he thought was right to get him in position. That he felt like Hamilton was kind of like constantly like running his wheels, constantly was trying to scrounge for everything, even though Burr knew that he was going to live a long life, that he had a lot of time. And it was kind of that there was no balance between the two of them, that Hamilton pushed everyone away because he felt like he was running out of time, and Burr was too complacent and being patient, which can be a good quality because it's a balance between efficiency and effort and being patient as you continue to work. And he just was complacent. So, which I did a little bit of research on after I just finished watching Hamilton, was that when he ran up against Jefferson, which was like one of the first open political campaigns in United States history, that Hamilton went against him. So that destroyed his ability to become president, and Jefferson won by a landslide, which was something that would happen for a while. The presidents were pretty unanimously decided for quite a few presidencies. The country didn't really become divided for a while because people were just kind of like following the people that they were aware of, following the leaders that they were aware of from the Revolution. And so Burr goes and has this conflict with Hamilton, and eventually Hamilton does what he said to do for his son, raise his gun, and he got killed. And oh my goodness. What was probably got me the most emotional though was seeing his wife come back to the forefront of the story at the end, because it seemed like, especially when she burned his letters, that she was going to be completely removed from what was going to happen moving forward. That it felt like she was gone, like he had pushed her away forever, but then they were able to rekindle some of that, and she told their stories. Oh my goodness, with building the Washington Monument that she contributed to fundraising for that, and then made the orphanage. Oh my goodness. That's when the story really struck home for me. And I mean, when they started to really blatantly push the idea of like, who's going to tell your story, who's going to like live on after you, that your legacy isn't decided by you, but all you can do is plant the seeds throughout your life. It was just, you really suddenly got the emotional toll that all these people had, and the reality that a lot of like your legacy is futile, that like Alexander Hamilton is now known, and part of that is because his political rivals boasted about his accomplishments. And so he was one of the people that argued for a federal bank. And so to take on the state's banks to create more legitimate lines of credit in the world. And that was an important key to ensure that the United States government was large enough so that the states would actually be able to continue to work together and be unified. You can't actually build an army if they have no money. You can't protect your people. You can't, support the citizens with like programs to support them. You can't. It's difficult to create a public school system that's federally managed if there's not one specific place where a lot of that money is like centralized. There has to be some type of federal taxes so that those states work together, and that's one thing that he helped establish. And then finally, when the play kind of like came together, it was such a great ride to go on. I loved getting to see that. The music So originally what my plan was to record my reaction as I went, but every single word that was spoken was so important to what was going on that I was like like just drawn in. I couldn't stop and look away or like look at my phone or do anything. I was so engrossed in every single word that was being said in every single lyric. The music was super interesting to listen to. I just felt like immersed in it. And by the end, you kind of forget that really no one spoke a single sentence that wasn't with a musical melody to it. I loved that there was so many callbacks to a lot of the themes that were established throughout the story, and how they all kind of built upon each other and built up to the end. And I just felt like the ending did a really good job of connecting all of the pieces, that nothing really felt out of place. In the moment, some things did. Like, for example, when the Revolutionary War is beginning and all of a sudden they flash to this wedding, it's like, why is this happening? But that sets up so many different lines of story. I mean, just like establishing the two sisters, for example, like those were important elements. Everything built on itself to culminate in the story. I loved seeing Hamilton. I'm so glad that it's on Disney Plus. Most importantly, I think Hamilton being on Disney Plus couldn't have come at a better time in the world, because we're so focused right now on issues of oppression, mistreatment, and change. I'm not perfect myself. I've said and done things I regret. I've made mistakes that I now see are wrong. And I really feel like this moment in history has made me reflect on that a lot more, and is shaping me into the person that I want to be. I want to be better than I want to be better not just in front of the camera, but behind it too. I want to be the best person I can possibly be, and be an ally to those in the world who deserve to be supported. And hopefully stories like Hamilton will continue to be created so that others can have a similar experience. I desire to be someone who doesn't just have good intentions, but is actively making a positive impact in everything I say and do. I appreciate everyone who has supported me, and I really hope that what I do as a content creator makes people feel that way too. I know I have a long way to go in my journey. I know I've been a part of the problem in the past of what's been going on, and that kills me to realize when I have self-reflection in the last few weeks and months that the world feels in complete chaos. Everything is kind of getting revealed. Everything is getting exposed. And I feel like I've been reflecting on myself a lot more. But I'm striving to go forward and to be the best human being I can be today and every day moving forward. And I appreciate those who will be understanding as I continue to navigate doing that too. Like everyone who has supported me in my personal life and my career on being on YouTube, it means the world to me. And I feel like I've become a better person and more aware of myself and my shortcomings by doing this. And I want people to be able to see and be heard and be supported. And shows like Hamilton allow that to happen around the world. Hamilton was an absolute joy. If you haven't seen it, I mean, I revealed a lot of it, but I would highly recommend going to check it out. It is a wonderful story. I think it's fantastic. I enjoyed it so much. But let me know down below what your thoughts are about Hamilton. Also, make sure to subscribe and click the beautiful bell, and then click on another magical video in the description or on the screen. Finally, as always, thanks for watching and have a magical day. If you'd like to talk to me more now that the live stream is wrapping up, I'm going to be live on Twitch right after this. Link is down in the description, twitch.tv/Wotso live. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to go play Super Mario Odyssey. Super excited to be on there, and I hope to see you over there. I'll see you all real soon. Have a magical day, everyone.